Welcome to the Monday Monologue. Well, lots been going on this week. I've been waiting for some Transformers to get shipped here, and we're going to be experimenting with different Transformers with our R300 amp and to see which ones work the best, what the price points are, the different options, and try to come up with a good solution. We saw that the little 3.5K Transformers from Edcore were a vast improvement over the factory iron that was in those big cans, and then also got some ISO Tango iron. We have a 20 watt and a 30 watt. For you guys that are looking for a bolt-on solution that I'm pretty sure is going to sound good and least amount of fab work, it's going to match what was there. It's going to be these single wind ISO Tango 30 watters. They're almost the exact same size as the factory cans. Obviously ISO is a super high quality brand made in Japan. It's got the turrets like the original one does. It's got all of the taps that the original one does, and should be just a direct swap out, which, hey, that's going to make life easy. The only real downside is they're not cheap. And some people might say, why would I put $1,000 output transformers on a $1,500 amplifier? Well, the main reason that amplifier is $1,500 instead of $4,000 or $5,000 is the output transformers, and obviously the issues with the power supply design. Well, the power supply was fairly easy to resolve, as you saw in the two videos I did on how to recap and rewire a few things and get them reliable and get the voltage where it needs to be. And so that's not a huge deal. Again, we need to hook this up and see what the performance is. There may be some other issues that are keeping it from really being a super great 300B amp. I'd like to be able to get it to run with no negative feedback. It really shouldn't need any. And anyway, we'll see that later this week when we start swapping iron in. But I'm probably going to save these for my DIY 300B build that right now has some Edcore iron, but they're 5K. These are 3.5K, so I'm not sure if that's going to be a good swap too. So just stay tuned. We're going to play with all of that. This little 20 watter is a multi-tap, which means you can adjust it for 2.5K. Let me see what all the ranges are on this thing. I can't even remember. 2.5K, 3.5K, or 5K. And it's got either an 8 ohm or 16 ohm output. And since the R300 pulls the feedback off of the 16 ohm tap, this would be another solution. They're a little smaller than the ones that are on the amp, but they're still already potted into a can. Sure, these are nice high quality ones. And then of course we got the two Edcores. This is a 5K, and then we've already tried the 3.5K. So we're going to swap back and forth between those two and see what the change in impedance does for the performance. And I guess this is going to kind of be what my Monday monologue's about this week, is how I learn about stuff and the value of trial and error. And through trial and error and trying things, and I know some of you folks, think that all I do is like look at the measurements and I'm done. I actually go and listen to the amps too, even if they don't measure well, and listen to them and see what they sound like and see if I hear something different, or if I hear something and then relate it to what the measurements show, so I can learn what these measurements actually mean. And I'm learning that tube amps sound good when they're operated in a range where they're making some THD. the best sounding amps that I have for my use, I'm seeing 1 to 2% THD in that range. Like, I'll be honest, the KT120 monoblocks, they sound really, really good, but they don't have that tube sound like this little amp does. And when I went back and looked at the curves and the measurements off of my 6SQ7 amp versus the Rysong A12, the Rysong A12 measured better. This amp sounds better. And what I'm seeing is that I'm using this in a range where there's some harmonic distortion that adds some flavor to the sound. And I think we kind of discovered that working on the color preamp, and that's why I'm building a color preamp to go with my KT120 monoblocks. So hopefully I could get the best of both worlds, that I could get the headroom and the solid bass punch that the extra watts are giving me, but then I can introduce some THD via the preamp to get the color back into the sound. And I think that's one of the things that gets overlooked when people are buying, choosing, designing amplifiers is, and I'm talking about SE amplifiers here, the tubes like being run fairly hot or close to their dissipation limits, about 90%, 85 to 90% is where they really sound good to me. But then you also need to have the tube type or the output range suited to your use. And it's one of the reasons I look at people talking about like the R8, and people say, well, I'm not super crazy about the way it sounds with the KT88 tubes, but to me the EL34 tubes sound better. Well, it's probably because the EL34 tubes are more in the range of the power that they need with their speakers in their room, and the KT88s are running so clean because you're running them at such a low percentage of their total power that you're not getting the tube sound out of the amp. And it's back to that little, 1 watt deckwear amp. If you're using a half a watt of power, like I had people writing in saying, I got 100 decibel speakers that I listen to this little thing at night at like 70 decibels, that's ideal. You want something like that. You don't want even this kind of amp for that use. And I guess through this trial and error process that I've used to learn from, and I'm learning more about the output transformers now, and I'm going to start swapping them around, trying to learn more about the effect that the different impedances and the different winding qualities, whether they're multi-tap or single tap, and all of that stuff has to do with the performance. And so we're going to have to test through all of that stuff. But I am learning from talking with folks that wind transformers about how this stuff works and the relationships between like windings and taps and that sort of thing, and the frequency response. What I may end up doing with these 20 watters is saving them for my 2A3 amp that needs 2.5K output transformers. So anyway, back to my EL34 amp. To start with, at least for the first small production of them, I think I'm just going to buy some Hammond chassis and make some templates. One of the things I've learned, here's a couple of these EAR834 clone chassis ready to go. I've learned that if I do 3 or 4 of them at once, it really doesn't take a lot longer than doing one. And I think that was the mistake that I made when I was trying to see how much time it takes to build one of these, was I was just building one. And if you're building multiples at the same time, it's that whole assembly line thing. If you mark one chassis and you got the caliper set, you just mark 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, mark off all those chassis, and then, center punch them, and then go on, and, you know what I mean? It goes pretty quick. And so I think for the first batch, like I said, we're going to just do that. I'm thinking about making 5 of these. I still have got, obviously, some testing to do. I don't have the wiring laid out. I really want to play with some output transformers. Like I said, I want to get a pair of the small ISO ones to audition. I've got 2 different types of ED cores to try. I got a 3.5K and a 5K, and I got to think through all that and do some testing and see which one of those really suits this circuit better. I also have been talking with Matt at Musical Power Supplies, and he seems more than willing to custom wind me some transformers for this amp once I figure out exactly what I need from testing these ED cores, and then see which one of those sounds better. As far as price points, the ED cores in the Musical Power Supplies are very similar by the time you factor in the shipping, and then the ISOs are probably 2 to 3 times what these are going to cost. Plus there's a long shipping lead time. They got to get shipped from Japan, and there's a part of me that likes the idea that these ED cores and the Musical Power Supplies are made in the USA, and it fits in with the theme of, this is going to be made in USA build. And I know these Hammond transformers aren't made in the USA, but still a USA company. And so I like that idea too. So I haven't ruled out Thermionic Labs, but again, somebody came at the door. I had to go deal with that. Anyway, like I was saying, been working with the folks at Thermionic Labs. I think the shipping's just going to eat me alive trying to use their iron. But I think it's similar to you folks that live in Europe. When y'all are trying to buy ED core iron, the shipping eats you alive. And so I would like to make sure that these things are done in a way that Thermionic Labs can be your source if you're over on that side of the world to get power transformer, the choke, the output transformers, and all that stuff over on that side of the world. And so that leads me to the last point, is one of the things that I really want to do with this whole project is it's going to be open source. And I'm going to show y'all how I build this thing. This isn't going to be rocket science. I'll show you all the parts that I'm using. I'm going to publish the BOM, the schematics, all that stuff. And then y'all can build this yourself if you want to. And I'm mainly doing production ones for folks that either don't have the skills or the time, or they're just, they're scared of getting involved with, the high voltages and all that kind of stuff, or they don't know how to solder. And I understand that. And, you think this is a cool product and you'd like to build one, but you can't. And so I think, too, that once I get into this, there may be a market for just the bare chassis. And I don't think I'm ever going to sell like a kit that comes with all the iron and just everything, because the shipping cost, even in the US, is pretty expensive. And then once you get the output transformers, just getting a pair of output transformers shipped is about $25. And so by the time you add the power transformer, the choke, and the output transformers, and you get the weight of the whole thing, all these parts and everything, it's going to be probably $50, $60 to ship this thing. And there's no point in you paying the shipping to my house and then from my house to your house. If I ever did do some sort of a kit thing, it would be kind of what I call the soft parts in the chassis. It comes with the pre-drilled chassis. It comes with a power switch IC connector, some speaker jacks, RCA jacks, the tube sockets, tag strips, all the stuff on the inside to build one. And don't think they're going to come with written instructions. And I know some of you guys have said, I'd buy a kit if it came with a 50-page assembly manual that's all illustrated and stuff. I don't know if y'all really think about what you're saying and how much trouble coming up with that would be. That's going to be very expensive. And if not expensive on me paying someone to do it, it would probably take me, because I'm not good, you've seen how I choke just doing a bomb, it would probably take me a month to come up with writing up an assembly manual, and then there'd be errors in it. And so it's going to be a video assembly series, and then the customer support will be via my website's forum, and hopefully some other folks can help y'all out diagnosing the problems. I cannot include like detailed hand-holding customer support for you guys that maybe have never built anything before, and this is way outside your skill set, and then you get involved and you can't figure out, you don't know how to read a schematic. You know, I can't teach you how to read a schematic as part of the kit price, because I'll end up spending more time helping you fix whatever you've done wrong than it would have taken me to have built the amp and just sent you one that was all assembled. So that's all stuff kind of in the future. A lot of this is going to depend on if I can find someone local that can fab up these chassis at a reasonable price. And then, again, gut wiring testing, we're still a little ways off from having this ready to go. I am still building these EAR 834 clones. I've sold about a half a dozen of them. They're $800, assembled with tubes, you know, with plus shipping to wherever you live. And right now I'm just selling them in the US. But right now I'm just not ready to start mailing stuff overseas like this. I think the whole customs and all of that stuff could end up being problematic. So for now, sticking with the continental US. Like I said, $800 plus shipping. They come with tubes and everything. Mundorf coupling caps are ready to go. Oh, and that was another thing. I recently caved in, and a customer had bought one of these with Mundorf caps, and he wanted me to build him a second one using, I think it was Jupiter caps. And while I'm sure eventually it's going to sound nice, when I first plugged it in, it's like, okay, there's something wrong with this thing. It sounds distorted and sounds horrible. And I had to run it with music playing through it for about 8 hours before it started sounding decent. And it probably still needs another, I don't know, the guys that I built this for said, yeah, I think it takes about 75 or 100 hours for the caps to break in. And I can't do that. And so, at least this guy's understanding, he knows what he bought, but as far as building this amp, they're going to get caps that I like and that I know sound good and that don't take a long break-in time. Because I can't take each one of these and, run music through them for 50 hours before I mail them out to make sure the caps are burned in. I know my Flex caps are the same way. When I've played with them, they sound horrible when you first turn the amp on. And, I'm planning on burning them in for maybe a couple of hours, but yeah, I can't do that. And so there's not going to be any options on, other kinds of caps than what I know sounds good in these. And again, I still need to experiment with the whole triode thing. I haven't done that with this style amp. I've only run it as an ultralinear. That may turn out to be a wash too, or just not sound good, and I don't want to sell something that doesn't sound good. So anyway, that's kind of burned up more than enough time for a Monday monologue. Hopefully this was informative and y'all enjoyed this content. If you did, please subscribe to the channel, please like the video, and thanks again for all your support, especially you folks that send donations to my website. That helps me afford buying, all this stuff to experiment with on the channel so we can learn together how to do audio on a budget. And I'll see you for the next Monday monologue.